In the hot summer of 1867, in a quiet farming area near Sedalia, Missouri, an 8-year-old boy named Timothy Caldwell became the focus of one of the most unsettling medical stories ever recorded in the Midwest. Dr. Samuel Harding, the only doctor for miles, filled 3 leather journals, with notes about a child whose strange behavior went against every known idea of human nature in 19th century medicine. To most people, Timothy looked like any normal boy, polite, calm, even charming. But under that innocent look was something that science of that time could not explain. Within 6 months, 3 people died in accidents that somehow connected to him, along with many farm animals found dead in odd circumstances. 11 people, all of whom had crossed paths with this quiet child, ended up dead or hurt. The official papers were locked away by local authorities for more than a century, but the truth about Timothy Caldwell exposed a darkness that still questions how early evil can appear in a person. Before we go deeper into Timothy's story and the fear that spread through Sedalia County, if you enjoy mysterious history, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep stories about America's most chilling secrets. And tell us in the comments where you're listening from. We love hearing from our mystery-loving family across the world. The story that made Timothy Caldwell's name whispered in fear didn't begin with violence, but with sadness. Missouri in 1867 was still hurting after the Civil War. Towns like Sedalia had sent their young men to die far away, leaving behind widows, orphans, and broken farms trying to recover. The Caldwell farm, hidden in a valley 15 miles south of town, had once been a sign of hope. James and Martha Caldwell dreamed of raising cattle and corn, but those dreams ended when James died in the Battle of Wilson's Creek in 1861. Martha tried to manage the land alone, but sickness took her in the cold winter of 1865. Their oldest son, Thomas, only 21, inherited the farm with more debt than hope. When he got the news that his brother William had died in Andersonville prison, leaving a widow and an 8-year-old boy, Thomas saw both burden and chance. The boy needed a home, and Thomas needed help. Thomas Caldwell was a rough man, hardened by war and loss. His wife Sarah had turned sharp and cold through years of disappointment. Neither had the gentleness needed to raise a child, especially one who showed up in the spring of 1866, carrying nothing but a small bag and a pair of eyes that seemed too old for his face. Timothy was small, with light skin that burned in the sun and thin blonde hair that Sarah kept short to avoid lice. He rarely spoke of his past, only giving bits and pieces. His father was a soldier. His mother coughed blood before she died. He had lived with neighbors for a short while. Adults noticed how polite he was, always saying, "Yes, sir," and "Yes, ma'am," never complaining, never refusing work or punishment. He seemed like the perfect child. Dr. Samuel Harding met Timothy for the first time in June 1866, when the boy came to town with his uncle for supplies. Harding, a doctor trained in Missouri Medical College and one of the few properly educated physicians west of St. Louis, had learned to read people well after treating wounded soldiers from both sides of the war. Something about the Caldwell boy disturbed him, though he couldn't explain why. The child was polite and calm, answered questions clearly, kept eye contact, and didn't show the usual nervousness of country children meeting strangers. Yet, Harding wrote later, "I felt uneasy in his presence. His gaze was too steady, as if he was studying me the way I study patients." The small farming community near Sedalia was the kind where everyone knew each other's business. The Caldwell farm was far, but not isolated enough for people to miss strange things. Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, who lived next door, often saw Timothy working alone in the fields or with the animals. She told her husband that the boy worked with unusual focus, never resting or playing like other children. "It's like watching a little machine," she said. "He doesn't tire, doesn't stop. no joy in him at all. She also noticed that her chickens grew uneasy when Timothy was nearby, huddling together and refusing to go near the fence. Her husband called it nonsense, but she couldn't shake the thought that animals could sense something off about him. The first death came on a burning August afternoon in 1866. 5-year-old Mary Fletcher, the blacksmith's daughter, known for her laughter, was found dead near Willow Creek, a shallow stream between properties. Timothy was the one who found her. He came to the Fletcher house just before dinner, clothes damp and face pale. "Mrs. Fletcher," he said calmly, "I found Mary by the creek. She's not breathing." A search group followed him and found Mary face down in barely 18 inches of water. Dr. Harding, called right away, said she had drowned. Sad, but not rare in those days. What troubled him was Timothy's description. The boy explained every detail: how Mary's dress caught on a branch, how the water looked around her face. He spoke like someone observing, not grieving. When asked how he came upon the place, he said he was looking for a lost calf. His uncle confirmed one had gone missing that morning, but the calf was found 2 days later in a meadow a mile away from the creek. At Mary's funeral, Timothy sat quietly beside his aunt and uncle. When thanked for helping, he replied softly, "I wish I had found her sooner." People found him kind and thoughtful, but Mrs. Patterson noticed something chilling. Through all the tears and cries, Timothy's face never changed. His eyes stayed dry and observant, watching everything. 3 weeks later, another death followed. Old Henrik Larsen, an aging logger with bad joints, was found dead at the bottom of Devil's Bluff, a rocky hill above the same creek. Again, it was Timothy who discovered him. "I saw Mr. Larsen's hat caught on a bush," he said. "I called out, but no one answered, so I climbed down. Henrik's neck was broken. He had fallen 40 feet. Dr. Harding noticed something odd. Dead bees lay scattered around the body, more than normal. The old man often gathered honey there and had never fallen before. Timothy suggested maybe the bees attacked and startled him, but when Harding checked the top of the bluff, the hives were untouched, calm, and active. The third tragedy erased any idea of coincidence. In September, 6-year-old Jacob Mills vanished while playing near the woods. After 4 days of searching, his body was found in an abandoned well half a mile from home. Timothy had joined the search team, working tirelessly for days. On the 4th morning, he told Jacob's father, "I think I found something." The boy was at the bottom, barely alive, but died hours after rescue. Harding noticed Timothy watching Jacob's final moments closely, his lips moving as if praying, yet his eyes followed every change in the dying child's face like he was taking notes. There was no sorrow in his gaze, only curiosity. Dr. Harding later revisited the well. Something felt wrong. The logs around it were carefully arranged, not random. It looked as if someone had hidden the well intentionally. The doctor couldn't say it out loud, but he suspected Jacob hadn't fallen by accident. Someone had placed him there, and only Timothy could have known where to find him. From then, Harding began keeping secret notes about the boy. Timothy seemed kind, respectful, hard-working, and always had a reason to be near every tragedy. He found the drowned girl, spotted the fallen man, and led the search for Jacob. He was at the center of it all. Harding's war experience had shown him men who killed without remorse, cold, distant, and fascinated by pain. Timothy had the same emptiness, but inside the body of a child. In October 1866, the doctor began visiting families under the excuse of checking their health, but in truth he was gathering clues. Soon a disturbing pattern appeared. Farms near the Caldwells lost animals in strange ways, broken necks, wounds that looked deliberate, accidents that made no sense. Mrs. Patterson said 17 of her chickens had died, all cleanly snapped at the neck, not torn by foxes. Harding's medical eye saw precision, as if someone had done it purposefully. knowing exactly where to strike. Other farmers had the same misfortunes. Calves strangled by ropes, bulls breaking legs in open fields. Every place was close enough for Timothy to walk to. People recalled seeing him nearby before each event, always polite, always smiling. Harding grew more disturbed when Timothy began asking questions about death, how doctors could tell if someone was truly dead, how long people took to die, what injuries caused it. He said it was because his uncle told him to learn in case of emergencies, but his calm tone felt unnatural. He absorbed every detail Harding shared, even false ones the doctor used to test him. He never corrected or argued, only listened with sharp focus. Harding later wrote that when he told Timothy stories of battlefield wounds, the boy didn't flinch or look sad. He just listened, eyes bright, as if he were studying the art of pain itself. Something was deeply wrong with his nature. The legal system in 1867 had no way to properly deal with a violent child. Timothy was far too young to face trial as an adult, yet far too dangerous to be placed in a regular orphanage or a simple reformatory. His case brought major confusion to Missouri's courts, drawing attention from doctors, judges, and professors from nearby states. After many weeks of legal disputes and expert discussions, including consultations, with physicians from as far away as Boston and Philadelphia, a compromise was made. Timothy would be placed in the care of the Missouri State Hospital for the Insane in Fulton. There, the best alienists in the region would study and attempt to treat him. The decision left everyone uneasy. Prosecutors wanted Timothy to be tried as an adult for murder, while his defenders insisted that a child his age could not truly understand his actions. The medical community itself was divided. Some thought the boy could be reformed, while others believed he was hopelessly dangerous. Dr. Samuel Harding personally volunteered to travel with Timothy to the hospital. He stayed there for 3 months, observing the boy closely, keeping notes, and working with the hospital staff to figure out what kind of mind they were facing. The result became one of the earliest written studies of antisocial behavior in children, though it would not see publication until many years later. Timothy adjusted to the hospital environment with the same cold cleverness he had once shown on the farm. He quickly learned how to copy emotions and reactions that seemed appropriate to those around him. Several staff members were convinced that he was showing real progress, that he was beginning to feel guilt and shame for what he had done. Timothy could shed believable tears when discussing his crimes, show convincing regret, and act sincerely thankful for the care he was given. But Dr. Harding was not fooled. He saw that Timothy was only observing others, collecting information on how people behaved so he could manipulate them more effectively. The boy was essentially building a mental catalog of emotional expressions, learning how to display feelings he did not actually experience. The subject displays striking intelligence but total absence of genuine emotional reaction, Dr. Harding wrote in his report. He can imitate normal human responses well enough to fool casual observers, but long-term study shows the performance is artificial. According to Harding, Timothy viewed happiness as the face people make when they want something good to continue, and sadness as the expression used when they want help or sympathy. He understood the concept of emotion intellectually, not emotionally. Harding's notes also revealed disturbing details about Timothy's imagination and his ideas for the future. Once the boy believed he had gained Harding's confidence by pretending to be interested in scientific discussions, he began sharing detailed plans for new experiments. These were are worse than his previous acts. Harding reported in private that Timothy had drawn up complex scenarios for observing human behavior under psychological and physical torment. His creativity, attention to detail, and understanding of human fear were far beyond his years. Harding concluded that if Timothy ever reached adulthood with access to resources, he could become one of the most dangerous people in American history. Records from the hospital show that Timothy remained there for a year and a half. During that period, several troubling incidents occurred that bore his unmistakable signature. Other patients were found dead under circumstances ruled accidental or natural, but deeper examination suggested careful planning. 3 elderly patients suffered apparent heart attacks after encounters with Timothy, though they had been healthy before. 2 younger patients were badly injured in supposed accidents, both in places where Timothy had been seen shortly before. Even more unsettling were reports from patients claiming that Timothy had been visiting them at night, standing silently beside their beds, watching them sleep. Staff members who worked near him began reporting strange effects. Several nurses experienced vivid nightmares after sessions with Timothy, dreams full of violence, cruelty, and death. 2 attendants eventually asked to be reassigned to other wards, saying they constantly felt watched, even when the boy was locked in his room. Dr. Martha Fitzgerald, brought in later to assist with Timothy's treatment, made an important discovery. She learned that Timothy had convinced a nurse to give him paper and pencil for therapeutic writing, claiming that it helped him sort through his feelings. His journal appeared to contain innocent reflections about guilt, remorse, and hope for change. The handwriting was childish and the language simple, painting the picture of a broken but recovering soul. But Dr. Fitzgerald's background in European psychiatry gave her experience with hidden writing systems. When she applied her analytical methods to Timothy's journal, she realized the entries contained a hidden code. Once decoded, the journal exposed Timothy's real thoughts. He felt no regret at all. Instead, he was studying the hospital, its routines, its guards, and its weaknesses. His goal wasn't to heal or escape immediately, but to learn. He wanted to use the hospital as a living laboratory to perfect new ways of controlling and harming others. Day 47, one decrypted note read, "Dr. F. believes my tears today were genuine. Her reactions show growing sympathy and reduced suspicion. Estimate, 3 more weeks of performance before physical contact is permitted." When the cipher was discovered, hospital administrators quickly restricted Timothy's movements and tightened supervision. But he adapted again. Deprived of close personal contact, he began gathering information in other ways, quietly memorizing the patterns of guards and staff routines. Then, in the summer of 1868, Timothy Caldwell vanished. The official report said he escaped during a transfer between buildings, slipping away despite being under constant watch by multiple guards. Dr. Harding never accepted that explanation. He believed the boy's disappearance was part of an elaborate plan prepared for months, maybe longer. Timothy had demonstrated extraordinary patience and intelligence throughout his stay. It was likely he had manipulated nearly everyone in the facility to build his escape step by step. After he was gone, several guards admitted they had made minor exceptions for Timothy, allowing him a bit of extra time outdoors, giving him more books, or slightly altering his schedule. Each favor seemed harmless alone, but together they may have created the perfect opening. He studied that institution and its people for 18 months, Harding wrote. By the time he made his move, he knew everyone's psychology better than they knew their own. His escape wasn't desperate. It was calculated. Over the next several years, strange deaths and accidents began appearing across the Midwest. Harding quietly collected these reports. Many bore Timothy's familiar signs: fatal accidents that made no sense, cruel experiments on animals, and the occasional appearance of a polite, helpful child who seemed too calm, too observant. The problem was that Timothy was now older, possibly stronger, and far more careful. The mistakes that once gave him away would not happen again. His deep study of human nature, mixed with his complete lack of empathy, made him something new and terrifying. Harding spent the rest of his career studying the phenomenon Timothy represented. In his private writings, later found after his death in 1891, Harding left hundreds of pages describing cases he believed were connected to the boy. He also filled his notebooks with long reflections on morality, conscience, and whether some people are simply born unable to feel right or wrong. Timothy's case went on to influence how doctors, judges, and lawmakers discussed children and crime for decades. The fact that a child could fool trained experts so easily forced society to question its assumptions about innocence and rehabilitation. His case suggested that some minds might not be broken. They might simply be built without empathy to begin with. After their recovery, Thomas and Sarah Caldwell abandoned the farm where they had lived with Timothy. Neither could bear to remain there. The land was sold off to the county and later to private owners in the 1890s, but few locals ever settled there. People claimed the soil was cursed, and animals refused to graze near the old cave where Timothy had performed his experiments. Sheriff Crawford had sealed it years earlier, but its location was whispered about for generations. Dr. Harding's journals were later donated to the Missouri Historical Society in 1923 by his daughter. She believed that, despite the frightening nature of the content, the documents were too valuable to science to remain hidden. They still sit in the archives today, accessible only to researchers with legitimate academic reasons. Thomas and Sarah Caldwell lived out their remaining years under false names, afraid that Timothy might someday return. Sarah passed away in 1889, and Thomas followed 5 years later. Neither ever had children. In his final entry, written just days before his death in 1891, Dr. Harding summed up his lifelong struggle to understand the boy. "I have spent 24 years seeking to grasp what Timothy Caldwell was," he wrote. "I now fear the truth. He was not an exception. He was a warning, a glimpse of what humanity could become without conscience or empathy. If he lived into adulthood, then somewhere in this country walks a man who knows the human mind better than any doctor, who can read people as easily as books, and who sees all others as mere test subjects." The story of Timothy Caldwell reminds us that evil can look innocent, and that our beliefs about childhood purity might be dangerously misguided. His case forces us to ask painful questions about moral growth, the limits of treatment, and the possibility that some individuals may be born without the very thing that makes us human. What are your thoughts on this story? Do you think every truth was uncovered? Or could there still be more to Timothy Caldwell's fate than what history records? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you liked this dark tale and want to hear more stories just like it, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share it with someone who loves mysteries wrapped in history. Remember, truth is often far more terrifying than fiction. History hides secrets that still test our understanding of what it means to be human. See you in the next story. He listened with focused attention, asking precise questions about wounds, blood loss, and the chances of survival. "Did they scream when you cut off their arms?" Timothy asked once, his pale blue eyes locked on Dr. Harding's face. "Or were they too hurt to make a sound?" The question, delivered in Timothy's usual polite tone, sent a chill through Dr. Harding that he would never forget. By November 1866, Dr. Harding had already filled almost 2 full journals with notes about Timothy Caldwell. The picture that formed was of a child with an adult's understanding of death and violence, but without the normal human feeling of empathy. Yet notes and documentation were not the same as proof. And proof was exactly what Harding needed if he hoped to protect the community from what he had begun to believe was a true predator hiding in the body of a boy. That chance came when Thomas Caldwell injured his back during the fall harvest. The injury forced him into bed for weeks, needing daily visits, giving Dr. Harding rare access to the Caldwell home. During these visits, he began to talk with Timothy for longer periods, carefully guiding tea, air conversations to learn how much the boy really knew and what kind of thoughts filled his mind. What he found was worse than he could ever have imagined. Timothy Caldwell had been performing experiments on living creatures for months, maybe even years. Through careful questioning and observation, Dr. Harding realized the boy had been capturing and torturing small animals, watching their reactions to pain and injury. Timothy once mentioned a cave where he said he liked to go to think and be alone. When Dr. Harding went to see it for himself, he found a disturbing collection of animal bones, makeshift surgical tools made from farm items, and a set of detailed drawings showing various forms of mutilation. The drawings were the most horrifying discovery. Created with shocking skill for a child, they showed rabbits, squirrels, birds, and other animals in different stages of dissection and suffering. Each image had notes written in Timothy's neat handwriting, describing how long each animal lived, what it did as it died, and which wounds caused the most agony. One note beside a rabbit's drawing read, "Subject remained awake about 10 minutes after eyes removed. Sounds faded slowly. Movement stopped after pressure to throat." Dr. Harding realized then that the mysterious animal deaths around the neighboring farms were not accidents. Timothy had been testing his methods on larger and larger victims, but what froze Dr. Harding's blood were the newest sketches. These did not show animals, but people. The drawings depicted men, women, and children in scenes of pain and terror, each with notes speculating about human anatomy and how different injuries might work. One figure was clearly Mary Fletcher, the first child who died. Another showed Henrik Lenn. A third was Jacob Mills, drawn at the bottom of a well with notes about dehydration and exposure. Timothy Caldwell hadn't just witnessed these deaths. He had planned them, carried them out, and recorded every detail for study. As Dr. Harding was about to learn, the nightmare in Sedalia County was far from finished. If this story chills you, share it with a friend who enjoys dark mysteries. Hit the like button to help support our content, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Let's find out what happens next. Dr. Harding now faced an impossible decision. The evidence from the cave proved Timothy was behind several killings, but it had been gathered through what was technically an illegal search, and even worse, Nay would believe that an 8-year-old could be a cold, calculating murderer. The medical understanding of 1867 had no concept of psychopathy or antisocial behavior. Back then, people believed all children were innocent, only led astray by bad surroundings or traumatic events. The idea that a child could be born without empathy or moral sense was beyond belief. Harding knew that if he went to the authorities, they would dismiss him as a doctor whose mind had been damaged by years of treating soldiers in war. They would explain away the evidence, claim Timothy was just a broken boy mourning his parents, and the killings would continue. So, Dr. Harding made a different choice. He decided to confront Timothy directly. On his next visit to the farm, he asked the boy to walk with him to check on the livestock in the far field. Once they were alone, Harding told Timothy he knew everything about the cave. Timothy didn't look surprised, or scared, or even sorry. He just listened quietly, occasionally nodding when Harding described the drawings and notes, like he was agreeing with the details. "You're not going to tell anyone," Timothy said when Harding was done. It wasn't a question, it was a fact. "Why wouldn't I?" Harding asked, honestly curious about his reasoning. Timothy smiled, the first real emotion Harding had ever seen from him. "Because no one will believe you," he said softly, "and because you want to see what I'll do next." The boy was right. Harding knew his story would sound insane, but Timothy had also pointed out something the doctor didn't want to admit. That part of him was fascinated, in a grim way, by the chance to study what might be the most dangerous kind of human he had ever met. "How long have you been doing this?" Harding asked. "Since I was 5, Timothy answered calmly. "Maybe earlier. I started with bugs, then mice, then bigger things. I like seeing how different creatures react to pain." When asked about the people who had died, Timothy simply shrugged. "They were experiments too. I wanted to see if people reacted the same way as animals. They do, mostly, but they understand what's happening to them, which makes it more interesting." Harding shivered, not from the cold but from dread. "And what are you planning to do next?" he asked. Timothy paused, thinking seriously. "I want to see what happens when you hurt someone who trusts you completely, someone who won't see it coming." Harding understood instantly. Timothy meant to kill his aunt and uncle. He realized there might be only hours before Timothy acted. That night, Harding went to Sheriff William Crawford in town. Crawford was a no-nonsense man, a veteran of the Union Army who didn't believe in wild stories but trusted Harding's judgment. Harding presented everything: the drawings, the deaths, Timothy's strange knowledge of anatomy, and most importantly, his confession that he planned to kill his relatives. The sheriff listened, visibly disturbed. "Even if half of this is true," Crawford said after studying the evidence, "we can't arrest a child over drawings. But we can watch him and be ready." They built a plan together. Harding would visit the farm as usual, using medicine to keep Thomas and Sarah sedated and safe. Crawford and his deputies would hide nearby, ready to move in at a moment's notice. The next morning, Harding rode to the farm. From the moment he arrived, something felt wrong. The usual sounds, the chickens, the pigs, were gone. The air was unnaturally quiet. Timothy stood, waiting in the doorway before Harding even stepped down. His rolled-up sleeves and freshly scrubbed hands gave away his preparation. "Good morning, Dr. Harding," he said politely, though his voice carried a tense excitement. "I've been waiting for you." Harding's stomach tightened. Inside he found Thomas and Sarah sleeping, but their skin was pale, their breathing shallow. "What did you give them?" Harding asked quietly. Timothy answered lightly, "Just some herbs I found in the woods. Some of them have very interesting effects." Harding checked their pulses. Both were weak but steady. Timothy had dosed them carefully. He wanted them alive but helpless. "They won't wake up for a few hours," Timothy said, "so we can talk." What followed was a conversation from a nightmare. Timothy spoke of death and pain as though he were giving a lesson. He described his killings with calm detail, how Mary Fletcher had drowned slowly, struggling for 3 full minutes before going still. "Everyone thinks drowning is quick," Timothy said almost cheerfully, "but it's not." He explained how he killed Henrik Len by setting a trap near the beehives, loosening rocks and throwing a bag of bees at him so he would fall to his death. He even described how he trapped Jacob Mills in a well, visiting daily to watch him weaken. Harding realized Timothy was describing real murders with no hint of regret. Finally, Harding asked what he planned to do next. Timothy smiled again, his eyes cold. "That's where you come in," he said. "You know what I am. You understand it. You'll be perfect for my next experiment. I want to see what a man like you does when he knows he's going to die. Will you fight to save them, run away, or just accept it?" As he spoke, Timothy began gathering tools, rope, knives, heavy objects, arranging them carefully like surgical instruments. Harding drew his pistol. "Step away, Timothy," he ordered. Timothy looked more curious than afraid. "That's a Navy Colt, isn't it? 6 bullets?" he asked. "And 6 people to protect, your patients, yourself, and the officers outside. Even if you shoot me, you'll have nothing left." Then Timothy moved toward his uncle's bed, a rope in his hand. Harding tried to stop him, but the boy was fast and attacked with a hidden knife, slashing Harding's arm. The struggle was fierce. The boy fought with the precision of someone who understood anatomy too well. Harding barely managed to disarm him when Sheriff Crawford and his deputies burst in. They wrestled Timothy to the ground as Harding checked on the unconscious couple. When it was over, Timothy sat quietly, blood on his face, eyes sharp and calm. "You can't prove anything," he said flatly. "No one will ever believe a child did this." Crawford stared down at him. "Maybe not," he said, "but trying to kill your family is enough." Timothy only smiled. "You won't hang me. I'm too young, and too interesting. Someone will want to study me." Just when everyone thought the horror in Sedalia County was ending, it took a darker turn. If this story chills you, share it with someone who enjoys dark mysteries. Hit the like button and subscribe for more. Let's see what happens next. Timothy Caldwell was wrong about his fate, but right about how impossible it would be to prove his crimes. When Sheriff Crawford brought the cave evidence to prosecutors, they refused to believe it. The drawings and notes were dismissed as fantasy, the work of a traumatized child. The deaths and accidents were written off as coincidence. But the attempt to kill his aunt and uncle could not be ignored. 3 officers had seen it with their own eyes. Even the most sympathetic people could not argue that an 8-year-old boy would attack his own family with a knife unless something inside him was deeply broken.